and welcome to the first episode in a series called We Will Be Heard. In this series, we're going to be talking about gender-based violence in South Africa through a series of stories told by both survivors and perpetrators of sexual violence. These stories are going to be told digitally in the form of digital stories, and if you don't know what that is, you're going to find out. And once we've watched the first digital story today, we're going to have a conversation about it in the studio. I'd like to introduce you to the guests that have joined me here in the studio. Starting with you, Nozwelo, welcome.
Thank you, Kath. My name is Nozwelo Ncube. I'm a program manager for MOSAIC, the organization focusing on supporting women and girls who've gone through sexual and domestic violence through providing counseling services as well as workshops that actually empower women to be able to stand up for themselves when they are faced with abuse incidences in their communities. It could be in their homes. So we welcome everyone who has gone through sexual and domestic violence with warm hands, and then we give them that support so that they're able to go through the processes and actually be able to heal at the end.
Absolutely. And Rape Crisis has worked a lot with MOSAIC, so
Yes.
it's a valuable partnership. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
And my colleague, Barbara, introduce yourself.
My name is Barbara Williams. Thanks for having me, Kath. I coordinate a counselling service at one of our 3 offices in the Naashon area. And really, our main focus and our ultimate focus is to provide support to survivors, to protect survivors of rape, to ensure that the road ahead is different from when that incident happened to them. And although we offer different programs, I think the ultimate goal is to get women who have been perpetrated to get them to a place of completion and being able to move on with their lives in a healthy way, of course.
Yes, thanks, Barbara. And somebody a little bit different, not from an NGO yourself, Naashon.
Thanks, Kath. I have a company called Naashon Zalk Media, and basically what we do is strategic communications for organizations in the development and non-profit sector.
Thanks. So hopefully we'll be able to discuss digital storytelling from that point of view.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. So we'd now like you to take a look at one of the digital stories that have been told for this series, and join us while we watch.
I think a lot about the difference between a story and a stereotype. My life is shaped not just by what happens to me, but by the stories that get told about what happens. People don't use the phrase fate worse than death about rape much anymore, but it's still there, in the idea that it's the worst thing that can possibly happen to a woman, that it somehow reduces one's value as a person. We don't tell those stories out loud, but we learn them somehow anyway. Why else would a woman who is raped feel shame? When my turn came up, brought to me by 2 strangers and a very large knife on a sunny afternoon, I was lucky. I didn't die that day. And I had another story to reach for. Sometime in my life, someone had planted the seed of a story that said, "My spirit is inviolable. You can get at my body, but you can't touch my essence." But I couldn't tell that story on my own. My soul is not contained inside my skin. Part of me lives between, in the cobweb of love and relationship that binds me to other people. So, if nobody else had wanted to hear the story I wanted to tell, if the only story available to me had been, "Take yourself and your shame away and hide it from the world, your life is over," then that would have become true. Instead, the people I loved and who loved me picked me up, and we told a different story. A stereotype is like a strong river. It only goes in one direction, and once you fall in, it's very hard to swim against the current. A story is more like a tree. You have to keep on choosing which branch you'll take, and it keeps on growing for a long, long time.
one of the things that is really prevalent that comes out of that is this idea of a stereotype. A stereotype or a label that we give somebody once they've become a victim of abuse. Then I just wanted to ask you, Nozwelo, in the work that you do at MOSAIC supporting women, how dangerous or what role do those stereotypes play, and how do you think storytelling helps women to overcome those stereotypes?
Thank you, Kath. For me, in the work that I do at MOSAIC, I found that stereotypes and myths actually go along, because at the end of the day, it's what the community, it's what the culture says about rape that actually influences people reporting, for example. Mm-hmm. If we say that, for example, a woman asks for it, what do we mean by that? If then it goes out and becomes internalized by every woman in the community, then who will be able to go and report these rape cases?
Right. So if she was drunk at the time, if she was wearing a short skirt, if she was in the shebeen, then she is that kind of girl and she was asking for it.
She was asking for it. So it's those stereotypes, those myths that we hold as a community that actually inhibit people from actually reporting such cases. Could be blame, for example, that people who have been raped actually asked for it or have actually done something to deserve being raped. No one deserves to be raped. No one actually asks to be raped, because that's a very violating and traumatizing experience. So that's something that we need to actually understand in the communities and the work that we do, so that it actually influences and helps us in understanding when a survivor comes to us, she needs to be supported in every way, not to be judged, not to be blamed. Exactly. So they're able to talk about what has happened to them.
And if you had to hear the individual story and it was your daughter who was just out having a night of fun, and maybe she had 1 or 2 drinks, but there's no way that she was asking for it, then it becomes a story and it's no longer a stereotype.
It's no longer a stereotype.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also speaks to every other woman out there that whatever you do, nobody deserves to be raped.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think, storytelling is a powerful thing. I want to bring this question to you, Barbara, that storytelling actually is a powerful force for healing when it comes to rape survivors. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience of women telling you their stories as a way of healing?
Yeah, as a counsellor, it's always it's a very privileged moment when you see the survivor telling a story from the moment she started the first session, and then you see the reaction once she realized what she has just said. Mm. So in her telling a story, it's a very powerful way for her to actually understand what happened to her, reflect on it, and that she has the answer. It's like the lady in the story says that yes, he could do that to me physically, but he couldn't touch my soul. Because during counseling, she gets an opportunity to discover her soul again and use those things which she gets her strength from. And those stories are very powerful for her healing, because ultimately she discovers on her road to healing that she actually is going to be able to live with us, and not not have allowed the perpetrator complete power over. So yes, in telling the story in the form of counseling, it's empowering, and there isn't the counselor don't always sit with the answers. It's actually and it's a beautiful story the way the lady told the story in the digital, because she says something powerful about the fact that it's in her soul which the answers lie, and that is who she is there. So counseling creates a space where she's able to discover that soul and use that part of her to overcome what's happened to her.
Yes, and I like the way she said how the people around her picked her up, and I think that's what's so fantastic about the work that you do, is that you are some of those people that pick rape survivors up and help them to reconnect with the healing through the telling of the stories. Yeah. But I think I'm going to come to you now, Naashon, just in terms of, this is actually a story that's been told in a public way. A counselling session is a very private, very personal space. But this digital storytelling platform is actually a public platform. Can you tell us a little bit about how powerful you think that might be?
I think that it's difficult to necessarily. Oh, let me begin again. This is
Should I
not
ask you
actually,
another question?
It just that it may. I had a discussion with Pam, and she mentioned, like some people do this, and it's not actually public.
Right.
So it's not necessary for public distribution. It can be, but that's purely in the hands of the person who created the story.
Right.
So,
but if you think about the kind of work that you do, where you use media to change people's perceptions, to change people's attitudes, to make people aware, I'm just thinking about it from that point of view, how you think it could be useful to bring about change.
It's hugely useful. I mean, the power of individual stories basically brings back the humanity that gets taken away by stereotypes and by statistics. And it's a sort of, primal thing that we all connect with, our stories. It's, let me just get my train of thought.
Take your time.
Sure. Essentially what I'm saying is allowing people to do visual storytelling, reassert their own power, and
Right.
Basically helps, catharsis, helps the healing process.
Yes.
Whether they choose to put it in the public realm, or they do it for family, or they do it for themselves, is entirely up to them. I do, however, think that these stories put into the public realm are a strong antidote to the negative power of stereotyping.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you're both working in organizations that do counseling, but you also do public awareness and education. You run training sessions, and I was just thinking, watching this clip, how fantastic it could be as a training aid to help people actually understand the personal experience of a rape survivor, but also challenging the myths and stereotypes about rape. Nozwelo, is that something that you think could be helpful for MOSAIC?
I think that would be very helpful for MOSAIC, especially in the trainings, because such digital stories need to be played in a space where people are able to work through their emotions. Because without knowing, we might actually trigger somebody else's experience in the process.
Exactly.
So it needs to be in an environment where it allows people to actually go through their emotions, their experiences in a healthy way. And also they would need support. Some of them would need support through the whole process. So those would be the digital stories are very powerful in actually assisting and helping survivors to reach a point where they actually accept their situation and be able to move on in a very healthy way. Mm-hmm.
And I think, what you were saying also, it can be viewed publicly, but it can also be viewed privately.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a rape survivor and you watch that film, it will make you feel that you aren't alone, and you might be watching that film entirely alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most powerful things that I found about that video was that Pam made it for her daughters. That was very moving for me.
Yes, yes. Barbara, you were also relating to some of the things that Naashon was saying about the digital platform and using stories as a form of catharsis and healing.
Yes, and if I particularly think about the communities that I specifically work in and knowing the culture, I live and work in the community. And if you were to have a young adolescent tell her a story digitally, her peers will listen to her rather than somebody else coming to tell and that story, somebody's story, because that is the culture of the communities that we live in. It's easier for peers to listen to their peers. So if you and I've always been, it's like with our Speak Out project that we do have, it is a more powerful impact to the value of the story. It's a more believable thing, and our communities want to know that this is the real thing. They don't, and digital storytelling, it would be very powerful in the especially in the adolescent groups of people. Just finding one person, one young child to tell her story, it will just encourage the rest of the others to also tell their stories, which would then deal with the issue of stereotypes and myths, and many people still keeping quiet about it, actually.
Yes, that's probably one of the most dangerous things about stereotypes, is how it silences women in particular, but also men who have been victims of violence. There's a very powerful stereotype about men not being victims that stops them from coming forward. So is there anything that you could say to encourage perhaps our viewers in terms of whether they could approach your organization for assistance, what kind of services that you offer?
Thank you, Kath. What I would like to say to the viewers is that anyone who has experienced rape shouldn't feel ashamed, should come up to actually access services so that they are actually able to walk in the path of healing. Rape is a traumatizing event, like we all know. But for us to be able to get there to a point where we say we are healing, we need to get that support. It could be family support, it could be support from the services, because there is the prosecution that is also involved. So it's those processes that we need to also be educated on, that we also need to know about and access those services because they are valuable in the community.
And I think, in fact, one of the episodes that we're going to be showing and We Will Be Heard will focus on the criminal justice system and the kind of processes and procedures there. So, and do you want to tell us how people can get hold of MOSAIC, your website, your telephone number?
Okay, you can access MOSAIC on the website www.mosaic.org.za, and our phone number 07021 761 7585. Our main offices are in Wynberg, 66 Autry Road, Wynberg in Cape Town.
Thanks, Nozwelo. Barbara?
Yes, if I have to end this episode for me today would be to actually really highlight the idea that rape isn't that much stranger danger rape thing anymore. It's very close into safe spaces, which makes it more dangerous. And I think it's important that especially young people who feel like there isn't, if they find themselves in that situations and they feel that there is no way out for them, that actually, yes, there is a way out for them. And the rape crisis will start the walk with them in whichever way it needs to go for them. As we provide counseling, court support, all the different kind of support that they would need. So just to encourage that idea of, or discourage the idea that this is my situation and I'm probably going to have to deal with this here right now. Encourage the young people that actually know there are people that will hear, that will listen to you, and that will actually try and support you in whichever way. And specifically, our head office in observatories contact number would be the 447 number, which you can find on our website, www.rapecrisis.org.za. And then also we have after hours crisis line services. And all those details you can find on our website. But the very easy, quick number to dial is 633-9229 for the Athlone office. So, yeah, more contact details is available on the website.
Thanks. Thank you, Barbara. Naashon, I think just to end off, ideas about the digital platform and use of digital storytelling.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I find very powerful about digital storytelling is that we live in a visual internet age. And so this gives people, and Barbara mentioned particularly adolescents, young people who may not necessarily either be that articulate or feel that they are that articulate. Yeah. It gives them so many other tools to put together this, and to compile their story. And it's also, it's teaching people skills, visual literacy skills, and skills around the use of computers, editing software. So I think it's something that hasn't really been tapped into in South Africa, but that is something that's very interesting and has a lot of potential.
And obviously something that can be useful in social media, on websites, on Facebook, YouTube, that kind of thing.
So if you combine the production of that, what essentially is content of those visual stories, and then use social media to get them out there, you enhance their power, because then you're not just telling one story, but you're telling many stories. If there's some kind of platform in which people can, put their stories out, then that would be, I think, very useful.
Right. Yeah. And building those platforms and building a strategy for using those platforms is something that you do.
Yeah. Do
you want to share your website as well?
Sure. So my website is www.naashon, that's with an N, naashon.co.za.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Naashon mentioned that Pam had produced the story for her daughters, which made me think about the families of survivors of trauma and sexual abuse. Is there anything that you could say to our viewers about how to support a rape survivor if somebody in your family has been raped? Barbara?
I think the important thing to know, to know, for people to know in communities is that there is, you have to, if it's a minor, it has to be reported, irrespective if there is question of whether the child wants to or not. That is one of the things that needs to happen. It has to be reported. In terms of providing support, we are always of the opinion that it is the walk of the actual survivor. It's her walk, and there's many things that you can't actually really do other than walk where she walks and walk how she walks, because for example, if a mother doesn't believe a child right from the beginning when she tells a story, that whole process for that child is going to be destructive in a way.
Right.
So it is very important to have the survivor be in the space that she is, and also it's important that families and supporters also know that there is things that you can do and there's things that you cannot do. There is this expectation of somebody that have been raped to crawl into a little dark corner, and families start to treat them like that, and then you need to be away. You must hide you, and that also impacts on the way forward for the survivor. So it's very important, and which is why the counselling service also provides counselling for the supporters of the survivor, so that we give them some kind of guidance as to or information on how to and what not to, what could possibly not work. But ultimately the idea of support is to walk how she walks and walk with her as she walks. Yeah. And yeah, it's difficult for those of us who have to who the parents are, whoever the husband is or the wife is. But ultimately it does impact on the way forward for the survivor. And I guess it's about having the information and about what the survivor is actually going through.
Thanks.
She doesn't want to be faffed over, or she doesn't want to crawl into a dark corner. Mm-hmm.
And so I suppose it's about not using the stereotype to stop listening, but to always be there and to listen.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Nozwelo, and thank you to Naashon for coming onto the show today. If anybody in the community watching this would like to make a digital story, please contact the producers of this show at the email address on screen. And thank you so much for watching. There will be 3 further episodes focusing on different elements of gender-based violence in South Africa, and we hope that you will join us for them.